Hello, everybody listening to this podcast. This is Brother Nature. This is a podcast where we discuss the ins and outs of maintaining a lawn and landscape in North Texas safely and naturally. My name is John Spriggs. I manage my family's lawn care company. We've been doing organic fertilization. The name of the company is Spriggs Brothers Organics. And I have about 18 years of experience doing lawn care in North Texas. Today is Sunday, May 27th, broadcasting to you from Allen, Texas, where it is a steamy 95 degrees. And I guess the headline for this first podcast is going to be Summer is Here. Summer is upon us, folks. We didn't get hardly a spring. We went almost immediately from winter to summer, and a matter of weeks. If you look at the forecast for this week, up to about 100 plus starting Thursday. So Thursday it's like 100, and then by Sunday we're 105, and no rain in sight. And I have a sneaking suspicion this is going to be one of those dry, hot summers, kind of a repeat of what we saw earlier in like 2012, 2011, at the beginning of what turned out to be a really long period of drought for North Texas. And I don't want to incur any wrath or bring down any bad juju on us, but just knowing the weather patterns for this area and how much rain we had last year, particularly like during the summer, we had rain pretty consistently every week through July. It was one of our wetter summers. So I'm just fingers crossed, but I'm just anticipating the worst for this summer. Boy, what a dour note to start the show on. So, as I mentioned before, this is the inaugural episode of Brother Nature, the Brother Nature podcast. And my hope for this podcast is that we can offer some really practical advice and just some relatable experiences for people who have lawns in North Texas. And like I mentioned previously, my company specializes in organic fertilization and lawn care. So I'll come at this from a angle of giving you the safest options, the most natural options, but certainly I don't want to limit the audience to just people who use organic fertilizers. This should be practical advice for anyone who has a lawn. I read a statistic somewhere that the DFW area has upwards of about 8 million people, and I don't know how many lawns that translates to, but if I had to guess, I'd say at least 1 million, maybe more, 2 million. I'm not sure. I couldn't find the statistics on that, but it's a lot of lawns. This is such a unique area, and I'm always blown away, especially when I travel, of just how unique DFW is. So many homes, and it's just wall to wall. It's just every city is stacked on top of each other. And it provides for some really interesting landscaping and really interesting, unique factors for this area. We've got, I think, certainly water conservation is a big issue here. We have limited water sources, and we've got a ton of lawns and irrigation throughout North Texas, and that's going to be a big problem as we continue to expand because our water sources aren't expanding. So we're going to have to really be smart about how we water, how we maintain our lawns moving forward, and be better stewards of the environment. So yeah, I'm going to start this show off just talking about real quick a thing that happened to me this week, which was I'm not a perfect person, and even though I'm a lawn care professional, a lot of times the one lawn that gets neglected the most is my own. And so earlier this week, I mowed my lawn after work from about 7 to 9 p.m., and I'm sure my neighbors were thrilled with me, but I had let that lawn go so long since my last cut, probably over about 2 weeks. And that's not good for this time of year. So I really want to talk about the importance of why you should mow your lawn weekly and not be like me and mow it every other week or let it get real tall. So the first reason you should mow your lawn weekly is the more frequently you cut it, the more it's going to trigger hormones that cause it to help it to grow and fill in. So right now we got a lot of lawns still recovering from some winter damage, and I'll go into that probably in another podcast, but we've got some areas where the grass is still kind of filling in, still thin and weak, especially if you have St. Augustine grass or zoysia grass. So mowing frequently is going to help trigger some hormones to help with some lateral growth. Also, when you mow, general rule of thumb is you should not take off more than 1/3 of the blade of grass, which I definitely was doing when I mowed this week. I took off probably over half of the blade of grass. And the reason why you don't want to do that just in general is because most of that chlorophyll in your grass, that the green area of your grass is going to be in that very top part, the top third of that blade. And that's the area that's producing chlorophyll, taking sunlight, turning it into energy. So when you cut that off, a lot of times you're cutting down to the brown in the grass, which can be dangerous. It can dry out a lot faster. You're removing all of that area of the blade that's producing energy, so your grass can really suffer. Can go into stress mode pretty quickly. So you want to mow frequently. I say every 7 days. If you can mow even more frequently than that, great. Obviously from a resources conservation standpoint and an environmental standpoint, that might not be the best, but your grass will certainly be happy. The other reason why you want to mow weekly is because you just get a better cut, you get a more even cut. It just looks better. If you're mulching, which hopefully most of you are mulching your grass clippings, and mulching just simply means you have a mower that doesn't bag, but actually turns those grass clippings into fine shreds of mulch, which break down into your lawn. It's a great fertilizer. It's a great source of carbon. It's a great. It's just got a lot of good benefits to your lawn, and it's saves you money, saves the city money for having to dispose of that. So yeah, if you're mulching your lawn, which hopefully you are. Mowing it more frequently will help reduce the amount of, well, I should say it this way. When you mow infrequently, you tend to get a real uneven cut, and you tend to leave large areas, lines of grass, of dead grass in the lawn. And those of you who have done this before, you'll know what I'm talking about. But there'll just be areas in the lawn where it's just huge piles of grass clippings. And it's not that takes longer for that to break down when they're piled up like that. So if you, for whatever reason, wait too long to mow a couple times, go over it a couple times, which is what I did when I mowed Thursday night. I went over it twice at different angles. So mow weekly. It's better for your lawn. It looks better. And you reduce the amount of problems that you have. And one more thing I wanted to say about grass clippings. If it leaves lines of a trail of dead grass clippings, you can also blow that out, scatter those clippings too, and that'll help them break down faster as well. You just don't want to leave those piled up because it's takes longer for them to break down, and it leaves they'll turn brown, and it leaves kind of an ugly brown pile of dead grass in your lawn. It doesn't look great. So moving on, I wanted to talk about just some mowing tips in general, especially now that we're getting into the hotter months. Really want to stress the importance of mowing tall, as tall as possible. Most mowers mow about 3.5 to 4 inches tall at the highest setting, and that's really where we want to be right now. The reason why is because The taller you mow it, the deeper the roots are going to grow, the more that canopy of grass is going to shade the soil. It'll keep your lawn from drying out, and it'll keep those roots cooler. When you have hotter soil temperatures, a lot of times your grass will go into survival mode and just start depleting that soil of carbohydrates, start pulling all those nutrients out as it's trying to go into survival mode. So as much as we can keep that soil shaded, the better your grass is going to be, and the less watering you have to do. The less watering, the less time it takes for that water to evaporate, or the more time it takes for that water to evaporate. I get a ton of people who tell me whenever I talk to them about mowing grass tall, and this goes for all North Texas warm season grasses: Bermuda grass, St. Augustine, zoysia, centipede grass, buffalo grass, all of them mow tall. In fact, buffalo grass, you really don't need to mow that often, just depending on where you are. But I have a ton of people who say, well, actually, the text, I read a book, or, I looked up the textbook recommendation for Bermuda grass is, 1 inch. I get a lot of people that tell me that. And a couple of things. One, no matter who you get advice from, whether it's, a textbook, me, you always got to take that with a grain of salt. Because every lawn is unique, every situation is unique. Two, a lot of those textbook recommendations are based on unrealistic, idealized conditions, meaning they're growing that Bermuda grass on a test plot where there is no bumps or unevenness to the soil, and they're able to water without any restrictions, and that's just not realistic for us, for North Texas lawn owners, because we have uneven soil. We've got most of us we're all constantly on watering restrictions, and we also just want to be mindful about how much water we're using too. When you mow at 1 inch, you've got to be mowing that, especially during the summertime, I would say every 2 to 3 days. And if you look at a golf course, which a lot of people look to golf courses, which I really stress for you, don't look to golf courses as a this is how my lawn should look. Golf courses spend a ton of money on that grass. They water the heck out of it. There's just so much work and time that goes into maintaining that grass. And I just really, you're going to be a lot happier person in life if you don't look to have your lawn look like a golf course. That is just a unrealistic, unhealthy version of what turf grass should look like. So, in summary, mow tall, mow frequently. Also, this should go without saying, but keep those lawnmower blades sharp. Keep your lawnmower tuned up and up to date. If you're just mowing your lawn, and I would recommend every 15 mows, either change out that blade or have it sharpened professionally. But you really want to keep that blade sharp, because that's going to make a big difference as far as how your lawn looks, particularly on thicker bladed grasses like zoysia and St. Augustine, Palisades zoysia, or any of the St. Augustine varieties. When you have a dull blade, it is very apparent on those grasses, because the tips get that kind of brown, white. Well, the best way I can describe it is you'll look at a St. Augustine lawn and it'll look almost dry. It'll have a white, brown, cottony look on top of it. And that's that blade, that top part of the blade being torn and having this huge brown area. A healthy cut lawn, a lawn that's cut with a sharp blade, will look green and crisp and not have that sort of that brownness on top that really discolors the grass. So next we're going to go into a little bit of water recommendations. Like I said, we are in summer. Summer is upon us, and watering at this point watering at this stage in the game is a real important consideration. Now, we have been getting some rainwater. If you look at websites like watermyyard.org, some of them might recommend you don't need any water because we've had, in the past 10 days we've had some rainfall. That, again, take with a grain of salt, because for me, I live in Allen, and they said that I didn't need any rainwater. And I know that I didn't get as much rainwater as is what is coming up on the official gauge. We certainly got some, last Sunday, but I don't think it was as much as they're saying. So take all that with a grain of salt. Have your own rain gauge, and also, if you have an irrigation system, I can't stress this enough. Get I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's not rain gauge, but it's well, maybe that is rain gauge. More moisture. It's a moisture sensor. Whatever the name is, I'm going blank on it right now. But there is a thing you can buy for your irrigation system that will monitor how much rainfall we've had in the past, past 7 days, and adjust your sprinkler system accordingly. That being said, we're getting into triple-digit heat. We're going to need, I think we're going to need about 3/4 of an inch or more of water a week. So when we talk about how much water does your lawn need, time is not the issue. It's how the depth, how many inches. So we want to go down probably 3/4 of an inch or more at this point, at this stage in the game. And so what that looks like, is probably about an hour's worth of watering, or an hour and a half, depending on where you live. The other thing too is you need to have someone take a look at your irrigation system. Always have a professional come out and take a look at your irrigation system at the beginning of the year, just to do a general tune-up, make sure that all of your sprinkler heads are spraying accurately, pointed in the right direction. Whenever we have big changes, which happens all the time, in water pressure, because the more houses we build, the more that water pressure is going to change. And whenever they add a water tower, that changes water pressure. So you want someone to come and monitor your water pressure, remeasure it every year, and make adjustments to your sprinkler system accordingly. But that makes a big difference as far as like how much you should water, what type of heads you have, makes a big difference on how much you should water. But generally speaking, about an hour, maybe an hour and a half at this point of watering. I would keep that on one day a week, if possible, two max. So in other words, of all the watering you need for the week, keep on 1 to 2 days. And on those days, you do a thing that is a principle I like to use called cycle and soak. And the city of Frisco has a great breakdown of this. You can look up, I'm trying to remember the name of the site. I had it pulled up here. Hang on just a second. Where is that? Okay. They've got, just go to friscotexas.gov, FRISCO, Texas.gov, and look up their watering department, and they have a great breakdown as far as like how much water you need. They talk about cycle and soak and why that's so important for North Texas. But essentially, we have dense clay soil that doesn't absorb water quickly. So we need to break up, if we need an hour of water a week, we need to break that up into manageable pieces so that your water can absorb it. Because after about 8 minutes, most clay soil starts to deflect that water. It can't absorb it fast enough. So at our lawn, we water about 9 minutes a zone, and we do it 4 to 5 times. Right now, we're doing it about 4 times. We may bump it up to 5 next week because it's getting hotter on our watering day. Starting probably, kind of early in the morning, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., somewhere in that time frame. And then depending on how long it takes you to cycle through your irrigation system, most of them, maybe an hour, hour and a half. So, maybe do like 3 a.m., 5 a.m. Again, it's every lawn's different. Every sprinkler system is a little bit different. So just find out how long it takes for you to cycle through on your sprinkler system all the way through all the zones, and and spread it out accordingly so that you're not having 2 zones go off at the same time. So I would say, again, very broad, generic advice, but an hour, hour and a half watering, break it up into manageable pieces. Keep it to 1 to 2 days a week. The reason why we want to keep it 1 to 2 days a week is because we also need that drying out period, particularly if your lawn is susceptible to fungus. St. Augustine, number one culprit as far as getting fungus. Lawn funguses, gray leaf spots, a brown patch, takeoff patch, it gets them all. And especially when we use city water, which is chlorinated and can spike the pH in the soil, and whenever we have higher pH in the soil, that can cause those fungi that are in the soil that cause those diseases to flare up. So really be smart about how much water you use, and allow your lawn to time to dry out. So that will do it for this first podcast, this inaugural podcast episode of Brother Nature. Sorry for rambling there. I had some other stuff I wanted to get to this week, but we'll have to save it for next week. So thanks for tuning in. Have a happy Memorial Day weekend. If you have any questions for me that I'll be happy to answer on the podcast, you can email me at john@spriggsbrothers.com. And just in the subject line, put podcast question, and I'll be happy to answer those on air. So once again, this is John Spriggs signing off for Brother Nature, reminding each and every one of you to love your lawn and love your neighbor. Thanks so much.